"Wake up! You're coming with me," said the mafia boss beside her bed. The smell of stale coffee and burnt grease clung to Lena Marquez like a second skin. It was baked into her apron, trapped in her hair, and she was sure it seeped from her pores. It was nearly 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the last customer at the Red Line Diner, a trucker nursing a bottomless cup of black coffee, had finally paid his check and left. Lena wiped down the counter for the 3rd time, her shoulders aching in a dull, familiar rhythm. This was the end of her second job. Her first, a day shift processing invoices in a stuffy downtown office, paid the rent. This one, slinging hash and enduring the weak advances of lonely men, paid for her brother's care. Exhaustion was a constant companion, a heavy cloak she could never shrug off. She locked the diner's glass door, the jingle of the keys sounding unnaturally loud in the silent street. The bus ride home was a blur of hazy streetlights and the vibration of the engine through the hard plastic seat. She lived in a part of the city that developers had forgotten, a cluster of low-rise brick apartments that always seemed damp. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs, her feet dragging, her keys already in hand. When she reached her door, 308, she stopped. The door was ajar, just slightly. A dark sliver of space where solid wood should have been in. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She froze, her exhausted mind snapping into high alert. She listened. Nothing, no television, no voices, just the distant hum of the freeway. She pushed the door open, her hand trembling. The violation hit her first. It was not a robbery. It was an invasion. Whoever had been inside had not been looking for valuables. They had been looking to terrorize. The cushions from her secondhand sofa were slashed, white stuffing erupting from the cheap floral fabric. The bag of flour she kept on the counter had been emptied across the linoleum floor, tracking footprints of white powder everywhere. In her small bedroom, her clothes were pulled from the drawers and scattered. But the worst part, the part that made her stomach clench with a cold, sick dread, was the single picture frame she kept on her nightstand. It was the only thing of real value she owned. A photo of her and her younger brother, Leo, at the beach years ago, before the accident, before his legs stopped working and his world shrank to the size of a specialized care facility. The glass was shattered, the photo itself ripped in half. She sank onto the edge of her mattress, staring at the mess. Nothing was stolen. Her laptop was still on the small kitchen table, and the emergency $50 she kept in a tea tin was untouched. This was random. It had to be. Some kids, maybe junkies looking for a quick score and getting angry when they found nothing. She was too tired to call the police. What would they do? Take a report? Dust for prints in a building where half the tenants had a record? She swept up the glass, threw the ruined photo frame in the trash, and fell into bed, too drained even to cry. The next night, the dread returned. She left the diner at the same time, just after 1 a.m. The street was empty except for a single, dark sedan parked across the street under a flickering orange streetlight. It was a nice car, too nice for this neighborhood. A Mercedes, maybe, black and gleaming like wet stone. 2 men stood beside it. They were not the usual corner boys or drunks. They were dressed in immaculate dark suits, their shirts white. They were not talking. They were not smoking. They were just watching the diner, watching her. Lena ducked her head, her keys digging into her palm as she walked faster toward the bus stop. She did not look back, but she could feel their stillness. It was the absolute lack of movement that scared her. They were predators. Perfectly patient, she made it home, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She ran up the 3 flights of stairs, fumbling for her key. This time, the door was locked, but something was on it. A small, white envelope was taped to the wood, right at eye level. Her name was not on it. She tore it off, her fingers clumsy, and unlocked her door. Slamming it shut and throwing the deadbolt, she leaned against the door, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Inside the envelope was a single piece of cardstock. Printed on it, in simple, blocky type, were 4 words. "Keep your mouth shut." Lena read it once, twice. Her mind raced, trying to find a connection. Shut about what? The diner? Her invoices? It made no sense. The break-in. The men in the suits. The note. This was not random, this was connected, and it was aimed directly at her. She was so terrified she barely slept. She lay in the dark, flinching at every creak of the old building. The note crumpled in her fist. She must have drifted off eventually, because the next thing she knew, she was awake. The room was still dark, but the quality of the darkness had changed. There was a shape in it, a void standing near the foot of her bed. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She tried to scream, but only a dry gasp escaped. The shape did not move. It was a man, tall and broad, silhouetted against the faint light from her window. He was so still. He seemed carved from the shadows themselves. She could smell him, the expensive, clean scent of wool, leather, and something sharp, like cologne and cold night air. "Do not scream," he said. His voice was not a whisper, but it was low, deep, and heavy with an authority that vibrated in the small room. It was a voice that expected and received absolute obedience. He took one step closer. The moonlight caught the sharp line of his jaw, the dark intensity of his eyes. He was dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her brother's medical bills for an entire year. "My name is Dario Ventresi," he said, as if that should mean something to her. "And you need to be very quiet." Lena's terror was so profound it was paralyzing. She could not move, could not speak. She just stared at this impossible man standing in her locked bedroom. "Get your shoes and a coat." The command broke her paralysis. "What? Who are you? Get out! I am calling the police." "No, you are not." He moved again, not quickly, but with a fluid confidence that was more intimidating than any sudden threat. He was at her bedside now, looking down at her. He was younger than his voice suggested, maybe 30, but his eyes were ancient. "We do not have time for this. Lena." He knew her name, the note, the men, the trashed apartment. "It was you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You sent them." "You broke in." "I did not," he said, his tone clipped, impatient. "But I know who did, and they are not as polite as I am. Now get up." He reached out, not to grab her, but to flip on her small bedside lamp. The sudden, weak yellow light illuminated his face. He was handsome, but it was a harsh, unforgiving beauty, high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a mouth that looked like it had never smiled. "Wake up," he said, his voice dropping, finalizing. "You're coming with me." "No," Lena finally found her voice, fueled by a surge of desperate anger. "I'm not going anywhere with you. Get out of my home. This is not a request." He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "You are in danger. You were in danger the moment you saw them." "Saw who? I did not see anything," she cried, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin. "2 nights ago," he said, his gaze pinning her. "Behind the diner. You were taking out the trash, around midnight." Lena's blood went cold. The dumpster was overflowing, and she had dragged 2 heavy bags out the back door. "You saw a man being forced into the trunk of a black car," Dario stated. It was not a question. Lena's mind flashed back. She had heard something, a thump, a muffled curse. She had looked over, seen a few men in suits, one man struggling. She had seen the trunk open. She had looked away immediately, her heart pounding, and hurried back inside, telling herself it was none of her business, just some drunken fight. "I did not see anything," she lied, her voice shaking. "You are a terrible liar," he said. A flicker of something, disdain, perhaps, in his eyes. "You saw it, and more importantly, they saw you. The note on your door? That was the first warning. The men watching you tonight? They were deciding whether to take you or silence you. The next person who comes through that door will not bother with a note." Lena's breath hitched. Who are you?" "I am the man who is saving your life. Now, I will not ask again. Get dressed." He turned his back to her, a gesture that was somehow both a courtesy and a display of ultimate confidence. He was not worried she would attack him. He walked to her window and looked down at the street. "They know about your brother, Lena," he said quietly, his back still to her. That single sentence shattered her remaining resistance. It was a bullet straight to her heart. "Leo?" she whispered, horrified. "What about Leo?" "He is safe, for now. At the facility. I have men watching the building. They will remain safe, as long as you are with me. You are threatening me." He finally turned back, his face a mask of cold control. "I am protecting you. Those other men, they will use him to control you. They will hurt him to get to me. Do you understand the difference?" She did. The cold, brutal logic of it settled in her stomach like lead. She was trapped, numbly. She slid out of bed. She pulled on the jeans from yesterday, her hands shaking so badly she could barely work the zipper. She grabbed a sweatshirt and her worn sneakers. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere safe." He led her out of the apartment, his hand lightly on her back. It was not a comforting touch. It was proprietary, a claim. In the hallway, 2 more men, dressed like him, were waiting. They nodded, they did not speak. The ride was silent. The car was a black luxury sedan, the windows tinted so dark she could not see out, only the blurred light smear of the city passing by. She sat in the back, as far from Dario as she could get, huddled against the door. He sat beside her, staring straight ahead, completely at ease. They drove for at least 30 minutes, leaving the city behind. Heading into the hills on the outskirts, they turned onto a private road, winding through dense trees, until they reached a house. It was not a house. It was a fortress. It was modern, all sharp angles of glass and dark steel, set deep in the woods. But the glass was black, reflective. And as they pulled up the drive, she saw men at the gate, men on the perimeter, men standing by the front door, all of them armed, all of them watching. Dario led her inside. The interior was as sterile as the outside. Cold marble floors, minimalist furniture, and more dark windows. It was silent, isolated, and terrifying. He took her to a room on the 2nd floor. It was a beautiful bedroom, larger than her entire apartment, with a king-sized bed and an attached marble bathroom. "You will stay here," he ordered, his voice echoing in the large, empty space. Lena looked at the door. "Am I a prisoner?" "You are a guest," he replied. "A protected guest. You will not leave this house. You will not leave this room without an escort. My men will be outside the door, 24/7, for your protection." The cage door slammed shut. The anger she had felt in her apartment, muted by fear, now roared back to life. It was a wild, desperate fury. "My brother," she yelled, spinning on him. "You cannot keep me here. I have to see my brother. I have to work. He needs me." "Your brother is fine. His care will be continued. I will handle it." "Handle it? You handle it? You storm into my life, destroy my home, kidnap me, and you think you can just handle my brother? You do not know anything about him, about me." She was screaming now, tears of rage and terror streaming down her face. She stepped toward him, wanting to hit him, to claw at that cold, composed face. "Let me go. You have no right." Dario did not flinch. He stood perfectly still, absorbing her tirade. His face remained a stone-cold mask of indifference. He did not move, did not speak, just let her rage break over him like water over a rock. She screamed until her throat was raw, until she was sobbing, breathless. "Please," she finally choked out. "Please, I cannot." He still did not move, but something in his eyes changed. For a fraction of a second, the stone facade cracked. She saw it. It was not pity. It was something deeper, a dark, unwelcome concern, a shared understanding of loss. Then it was gone, shuttered away as quickly as it had appeared. He turned and walked to the door. "Wait, where are you going?" she cried. "I have business," he said. He paused at the door. "Try to get some sleep. You are safe here." The door closed with a heavy, quiet click. She heard the sound of a lock engaging. Lena was alone. She lunged for the door, twisting the handle, pounding on the solid wood with her fists, screaming his name, screaming for anyone. But there was no answer. She finally collapsed, her back sliding down the door, and cried. She wept for her trashed apartment, for her lost job, for the picture of Leo. She wept for her small, hard, predictable life, which had just been annihilated. Hours passed. The anger and fear eventually subsided, leaving only a hollow, bone-deep exhaustion. She looked at the luxurious bed, a bed she was sure cost a fortune, and felt nothing but contempt for it. She walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. It overlooked a dark, manicured lawn, bordered by dense woods. It was a prison made of glass. She stood there, staring into the blackness, feeling trapped and utterly alone, and then she saw it. A flicker of movement at the edge of the woods. Not an animal. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing, moving in a low crouch, parallel to the house. Lena's heart stopped. She pressed her hand to the glass. The man stepped into a patch of faint moonlight, and she saw the glint of steel in his hand. It was a long knife. He was looking right at her window. Before she could even process the terror, two shapes detached themselves from the shadows near the house. They were Dario's men. They moved with a silent, brutal efficiency. There was no shouting, no gunshot, just a muffled grunt, the sound of a struggle. And then the man with the knife was on the ground. One guard pinned him while the other checked the perimeter. A third man appeared, and together they dragged the intruder away, vanishing back into the darkness. It was over in less than 10 seconds. Lena stumbled back from the window, her legs giving out. She fell onto the plush carpet, her entire body shaking. Dario had not been threatening her. He had not been lying. The walls she was screaming at, the guards she was terrified of, they were not here to keep her in. They were here to keep that out. Lena did not sleep. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, watching the window until the first gray light of dawn diluted the shadows. She had seen the guards take the man, but the image of the knife, the focused intent in the intruder's eyes, was burned into her mind. She was still sitting there when the lock on her door clicked. Dario Ventresi entered. He looked as immaculate as he had in the dark of her bedroom. His dark suit was unrumpled, his black hair perfectly in place. He held a small tablet in one hand. He did not, however, look rested. There were new, hard lines around his mouth, and his eyes were cold. He talked, Dario said. He did not waste time with greetings. Lena slowly got to her feet, her joints stiff. The man with the knife. His name is irrelevant. He was sent by the Falcone family. The name meant nothing to her, just another Italian word. Why? Why me? I told you. They saw you, but it is not just about what you witnessed. He looked at her, his gaze clinical, assessing. It is about me. They know I have you. Taking you or killing you is a message. It proves I am vulnerable. Vulnerable? The word sounded ridiculous. This man was a walking fortress of intimidation. The man you saw being put into the car 2 nights ago, Dario continued, ignoring her. That was my cousin, Angelo. Lena stared. This was not just business, it was family. He was selling information to the Falcones, secrets about my shipments, my routes. He betrayed my father's name. He betrayed me. Dario's voice was flat, devoid of emotion, which made the words terrifying. You witnessed an internal execution. My justice. The Falcones were furious. They lost their inside man, so they came after the only other loose end, you. The scale of it hit her. This was not a back alley fight. This was a war, and she had stumbled onto the battlefield while taking out the trash. So let me go, she begged, the words rushing out. I will not talk. I swear. I will leave the city. I will take my brother. You will never hear from me again. I do not care about your cousin or your justice. Please. No. Why not? She cried, her voice cracking. You said yourself, I am a liability. Having me here makes you vulnerable. Just let me disappear. They already know you are with me, he said, his patience visibly thinning. If I let you go, they will find you in an hour, and what they will do to you, just to prove they can, is worse than anything you can imagine. He took a step closer. You think you were scared last night? You think your trashed apartment was bad? That was a polite inquiry. What comes next will not be. Lena recoiled. He was right. The man with the knife had not been there to negotiate. I cannot live like this, she whispered, shaking her head. The tears she had held back all night finally came. I just want my life back. My awful, exhausting, 2-job life. I just want Leo to be safe. Dario watched her, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched, filled only by her quiet sobs. He did not move, did not offer a hand, and he just waited. When her breathing finally steadied, he spoke again, and the hard edge in his voice was gone. It was not soft, but it was lower, steadier. "You cannot have that life back. Lena, it is over. But I will keep you alive, and I will keep your brother safe." He gestured to the hallway. "Get cleaned up. Someone will bring you food." He left her alone in the massive, silent room. 2 days passed in a suffocating haze. Lena felt like a ghost haunting a billionaire's mausoleum. Guards stood outside her door 24 hours a day. A quiet, older woman brought her meals on a tray. Meals Lena barely touched. She had a television with 1,000 channels, a bathroom stocked with expensive products, and a view of a sterile, perfectly green lawn. She had never been more miserable. On the third night, Dario reappeared. "You are not eating," he said. It was an observation, not a question. "I'm not hungry." She was sitting by the window again, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "You will eat. With me." He did not wait for an answer, just held the door open. Resigned, knowing a fight was useless, she followed him downstairs to a large, formal dining room. A table that could seat 20 was set for 2, at opposite ends. "Sit here," he commanded, pulling out a chair much closer to his own. The tension was thick enough to cut. The same silent woman served them. Some kind of pasta with a dark, rich sauce. Lena ate because she was ordered to, mechanically lifting the fork to her mouth. Dario ate with a quiet, focused intensity. He did not look at his food. He looked at her. "You are angry," he said. "I am terrified. I am a prisoner. Of course I am angry. You are safer here than you ever were in that apartment. That does not make me free." He put his fork down. "Tell me about your brother." The question blindsided her. She had expected threats, commands, or more grim details about his war. "Why? I'm protecting him. I should know who I am protecting." Lena hesitated, but the need to talk about Leo, to make him real to this man who held both their lives in his hands, was overwhelming. "His name is Leo," she said, her voice softening. "He's 16. He was in an accident 3 years ago. A drunk driver hit him while he was riding his bike, his spine. He cannot walk. He needs full-time care. He's smart. He wants to be an architect." She talked, and for the first time, Dario Ventresi just listened. He did not interrupt. He did not check his phone. He just watched her, his dark eyes focused, absorbing every detail. She realized, with a jolt, that this was his strength. It was not just the violence he implied. It was this absolute unnerving stillness, this capacity to listen as if he were memorizing a battle plan. She found herself staring at his hands, which rested on the table. They were strong, clean, the nails short. They were hands that could sign a death warrant or, she imagined, be surprisingly gentle. He had not touched her, not once, except for that brief, guiding pressure on her back when he took her from her apartment. He never crowded her, never used his size to intimidate her up close. He did not need to. His presence filled the room all on itself. When she finished speaking about Leo, a heavy silence fell between them. "You do all that," he said, "on 2 jobs, whatever it takes." He nodded slowly. "I understand that." A strange, unwelcome heat prickled under her skin. She hated him. He was a criminal, a killer, probably. He had stolen her life. So why did his deep voice seem to resonate in her chest? Why did she find herself noticing the way his dark shirt stretched across his shoulders? Why did his approval, that simple, slow nod, make her feel seen? She hated the feeling. She hated him for making her feel it. "May I be excused?" she asked, her voice turning cold again, shoving her plate away. Dario's eyes hardened, the brief connection broken. "Go!" She fled back to her room, her heart pounding. She was furious with him, but she was more furious with herself. She was too proud to admit, even in her own mind, that her captor's presence was the only thing that made her feel remotely safe. Later that night, the storm hit. It was not a gentle rain, it was a violent, raging tempest, the kind that shook the foundations of the house. Wind howled through the trees, and rain lashed against the dark glass of her window. Lena watched the lightning split the sky, counting the seconds until the thunder, just as she had when she was a child. 1, 2, 3. The thunder crackled, rattling the window, and then the house went black. It was not a flicker. It was an absolute, instantaneous void. The lights died, the air conditioning unit cut off, and the house was plunged into a silence so profound it was louder than the storm. Lena gasped, her hand flying to her throat. The darkness was total. She could not see her hand in front of her face. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. It was not a fear of the dark. It was the sudden, terrifying realization that the fortress had failed. The guards, the cameras, the electric locks. What if they were all gone? The image of the man with the knife flashed in her mind. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" She stumbled toward the door, her hands outstretched, hitting her shin on the edge of the bed frame. She fumbled for the handle, twisted it, locked, of course. "Help!" she yelled, pounding on the wood. "Let me out! The power is gone! Let me out!" The wind howled. No one answered. She was trapped. She was locked in a dark room in a house full of armed men, in the middle of a forest. And something was wrong. Her breathing hitched, becoming short. Painful gasps. The walls were closing in. She sank to the floor, her back against the door, pulling her knees to her chest. She could not breathe. The lock clicked. The door was wrenched open, and she fell backward into the hallway. A shape loomed over her. "Lena!" Dario's voice cut through the dark. I cannot breathe," she gasped, scrambling backward. "The power, the window, the man—" "It is just the generator," he said, his voice calm but tense. "It is switching over. Breathe." "I cannot," she cried, her panic cresting. She felt trapped, blind, suffocating. He moved, and in the next second his hands were on her arms. He did not grab her. He gripped her, hard, grounding her. He hauled her to her feet. "You are safe." "Nothing is wrong," he said, his voice low, right by her ear. "It is dark. I am locked in," she sobbed, her hands pushing against his chest, but his chest was like a wall, solid, unmoving. "Shh." He did something she never expected. He pulled her against him. His arms went around her, one hand spreading wide across her back, the other gripping her shoulder. He pulled her flush against his body, tucking her head under his chin. He was so warm. The smell of him, that expensive, clean scent, filled her lungs. He just held her, firmly. He did not stroke her hair, did not whisper comforts. He just held her, a human shield against her own terror. Lena froze. Her panic was so total, it simply shattered against the reality of his embrace. All she could register was him, the solid, steady beat of his heart under her ear, the hard muscles of his chest, the heat of his skin through the thin fabric of his shirt. Her hands, which had been pushing him away, slowly uncurled. Her fingers gripped his shirt. She clung to him, her body shaking violently. "Breathe with me," he commanded, his voice rumbling through her. He took a long, slow breath. She tried to follow. He did it again. Slowly, the roaring in her ears faded, the storm, his heartbeat, her breathing, that was all that existed. Her panic receded, leaving behind a raw, tingling awareness. She was pressed against Dario Ventresi. Her entire body, from her knees to her chest, was against his. Her cheek was damp against his neck. The air between them changed. It was no longer about comfort. It was electric. His hand on her back moved, just slightly, his fingers spreading, pressing her closer. His heart, the one that had been so steady, was hammering now, as fast as hers. She tilted her head back. She could not see his face, only his silhouette against the fainter gray of the hallway window. He was looking down at her. She could feel his breath, warm on her forehead. He lowered his head. She knew he was going to kiss her, and the most terrifying part was, she wanted to know if his mouth was as hard as his words, or as surprisingly warm as his embrace. Her lips parted, her eyes fluttered shut, then shame and confusion crashed over her. This was her kidnapper, a man who dealt in violence, a man whose justice meant putting a cousin in the trunk of a car. No, She pushed against his chest, her voice a broken whisper. "Don't." He did not argue. He did not push. He did not try to convince her. He simply released her. He stepped back, and the cold air of the hallway rushed between them. Lena stumbled, catching herself on the doorframe, her body suddenly freezing where he had been warm. Dario stood in the darkness, a shadow just out of reach. He said nothing. That was worse. The rejection, the anger, even a curse. She could have fought that. But his silence, his immediate, controlled retreat, it was devastating. It meant he was in complete control of himself, while she was a mess of trembling nerves and confused desire. "The lights will be on in a minute," he said, his voice once again flat, devoid of all emotion. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness down the hall, leaving her alone and shaking. The next morning, Lena woke aching and exhausted. The power was back. The sun was shining, and the storm felt like a fever dream. The near kiss, however, felt painfully real. Dario was gone. She was almost relieved. She could not look at him. The quiet woman brought her breakfast. Lena was listlessly pushing eggs around her plate when one of Dario's guards entered her room. He did not knock. "Mr. Ventresi said you should have this." The guard said he was a mountain of a man with a scarred face. He held out a cell phone. "It is for you," he grunted. Lena looked at it. "Who is it?" "The facility. Your brother." Lena snatched the phone, her heart leaping. "Leo, is he okay?" She fumbled with the button, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hello? This is Lena Marquez." It was not Leo. It was Martha, the head administrator at the care facility. Her voice was thin, strained. "Lena. Oh, thank God. We've been trying your number all morning." "Martha, what is it? What is wrong?" "Lena," Martha's voice broke. There was an incident last night. Some men. They came here. They forced their way in. Oh, God, Lena." A cold black hole opened in Lena's stomach. "Where is he? Martha, where is Leo?" "They took him. Lena," the woman sobbed. "They knocked out the night orderly. They took Leo. He's gone." The phone slipped from Lena's numb fingers. It clattered to the floor. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The guard was already on his own phone, speaking in low, urgent Italian. Lena did not hear him. She did not feel the plush carpet under her knees. All she could see was Leo's face, scared, confused, being taken by strange men. Dario. This was his world. This was his fault, his protection, his promise. She did not know how long she knelt there, but the next thing she knew, Dario was storming into the room. He must have just arrived. His hair was damp from the rain, and his face was a mask of thunder. "What happened?" he demanded. Lena looked up at him, her eyes completely dry. The shock was so profound, it had frozen her tears. "They took him." "Who?" "Your friends," she spat, the sound venomous. "Or your enemies. What is the difference? You. This is because of you." "Lena." His voice was dangerously quiet. "I did not do this." "You promised," she screamed, lurching to her feet. "You promised he was safe. You said you had men. You lied. You brought this to my door." She flew at him, her hands raised. She was not thinking. It was pure, primal instinct. She slapped him. Her palm connected with his jaw with a sharp, stinging crack that echoed in the silent room. Dario did not even blink. He just stared down at her, the red mark of her handprint already rising on his skin. The violence of the act, the sheer audacity of striking this man, broke the dam. The shock shattered, and the grief came. A tidal wave of terror and loss so powerful, it buckled her knees. "They took my boy," she sobbed, a sound of such complete despair. It was barely human. "They took Leo." She began to fall. Dario caught her. He caught her as she collapsed, pulling her against his chest, his arms locking around her as her body convulsed with sobs. She pounded his chest with her fists. Useless, weak blows. "You promised, you promised, you promised." "I know," he said, his voice a low growl against her hair. "It is all your fault." She wept into his suit. "I know." He held her, his grip unbreakable, letting her sob, letting her hit him. He tucked her head against his shoulder, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped. He let her cry for a long time. When her sobs finally quieted into ragged, hitched breaths, he did not let her go. He just held her tighter. "I will find him," he swore, his voice resonant. "Please, I cannot." He still did not move, but something in his eyes changed. For a fraction of a second, the stone facade cracked. She saw it. It was not pity. It was something deeper. A dark, unwelcome concern. A shared understanding of loss. Then it was gone, shuttered away as quickly as it had appeared. He turned and walked to the door. "Wait, where are you going?" she cried. "I have business," he said. He paused at the door. "Try to get some sleep. You are safe here." The door closed with a heavy, quiet click. She heard the sound of a lock engaging. Lena was alone. She lunged for the door, twisting the handle, pounding on the solid wood with her fists, screaming his name, screaming for anyone, but there was no answer. She finally collapsed, her back sliding down the door, and cried. She wept for her trashed apartment, for her lost job, for the picture of Leo. She wept for her small, hard, predictable life, which had just been annihilated. Hours passed. The anger and fear eventually subsided, leaving only a hollow, bone-deep exhaustion. She looked at the luxurious bed, a bed she was sure cost a fortune, and felt nothing but contempt for it. She walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. It overlooked a dark, manicured lawn, bordered by dense woods. It was a prison made of glass. She stood there, staring into the blackness, feeling trapped and utterly alone, and then she saw it, a flicker of movement at the edge of the woods. Not an animal, it was a man, dressed in dark clothing, moving in a low crouch, parallel to the house. Lena's heart stopped. She pressed her hand to the glass. The man stepped into a patch of faint moonlight, and she saw the glint of steel in his hand. It was a long knife. He was looking right at her window. Before she could even process the terror, two shapes detached themselves from the shadows near the house. They were Dario's men. They moved with a silent, brutal efficiency. There was no shouting, no gunshot, just a muffled grunt, the sound of a struggle. And then the man with the knife was on the ground. One guard pinned him while the other checked the perimeter. A third man appeared, and together they dragged the intruder away, vanishing back into the darkness. It was over in less than 10 seconds. Lena stumbled back from the window, her legs giving out. She fell onto the plush carpet, her entire body shaking. Dario had not been threatening her. He had not been lying. The walls she was screaming at, the guards she was terrified of, they were not here to keep her in. They were here to keep that out of ice and iron, a vow made to her and to himself. "I swear on my mother's grave, Lena, I will find your brother, and I will bring him back to you." Dario held her. He did not let go, even when her sobs subsided into a series of ragged, agonizing breaths. He simply stood in the center of the opulent room, a pillar of unmoving strength, letting her absorb the fact that he had not pushed her away, even after she had struck him, the vow he had made. "I will find him," hung in the air, a bond of iron and ice. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He did not release her, instead shifting her slightly. One arm still locked around her waist, while he answered it with his free hand. "What?" His voice was a low growl. He listened, his entire body going rigid. Lena felt the change, felt the muscles in his chest and arm harden into steel. "Gallo," he said, the name sounding like a curse. "Ricardo Gallo. He's a child. He thinks this is a game." Lena pulled back, wiping her wet face with the back of her hand. "Who is Gallo?" Dario's eyes, dark and cold, met hers. The red mark from her slap was stark against his skin, but he seemed unaware of it. "He leads a splinter faction, young, stupid, and ambitious. They are not with the Falcones. They are scavengers, trying to build their own territory by picking at my scraps. They see you as leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For this." Dario gestured around the safe house. "At the wealth, the power. They think taking your brother proves I am weak, that you have made me soft. They want a meeting. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what? A trade?" Lena's blood ran cold. "Me for Leo? No. Dario said, his voice absolute. "There will be no trade. I am going to get your brother back, and they are going to pay for touching him." He was in motion instantly, striding out of the room, shouting commands in Italian to the guards in the hall. "Get the car. Tell Franco I want 2 men on the roof across the street, and get me Riccardo Gallo on the line. Now." Lena ran after him. "What are you doing? Where are you going?" He stopped at the foot of the stairs, turning to her. "They want a meeting. Tonight at the Casino Nero. I am going to give it to them. I am coming with you." The words were out of her mouth before she could think. The guard by the door looked at her like she was insane. Dario studied her, a flicker of surprise in his cold gaze. "You will not. It is too dangerous. It is my brother," she said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "You do not get to do this without me. I will not be locked in this room again, waiting, while you decide his fate. I am going." She expected him to yell, to command, to have her dragged back to her room. Instead, he looked at her for a long, silent moment. He saw the terror in her eyes, but beneath it, he saw the same iron she had used to survive her entire life. He saw the woman who worked 2 jobs, who had slapped him, and who was now willing to walk into the fire for the only person she loved. He gave a single, sharp nod. "Fine," he said. "Do not leave my side. Do not speak, and if I tell you to run, you run. Do you understand me?" "I understand," she said. The Casino Nero was not a casino. It was a cavernous, windowless room hidden beneath a defunct slaughterhouse in the industrial district. The air was thick with the smell of cigar smoke, stale whiskey, and desperation. The only light came from the green-shaded lamps hanging low over the card tables, illuminating the grim, focused faces of the men gambling there. When Dario walked in, the room fell silent. It was not a respectful silence. It was a tense, predatory hush. Men stopped breathing to watch him pass. Lena walked beside him, her hand gripping the sleeve of his jacket, her eyes fixed forward. She could feel dozens of stares on her, dissecting her. Dario did not seem to notice. He walked through the room as if he owned it, his gaze locked on a private, curtained-off area at the far end. 2 guards stood by the curtain. They stepped aside. Inside, 3 men sat at a round table. The man in the center, clearly Riccardo Gallo, was young. He was maybe 25, with slicked-back hair, a flashy gold watch, and eyes that were trying to look hard but only looked nervous. "Ventrici," Gallo said, trying to sound casual. "You came, and you brought the girl. Good. Where is the boy? Riccardo?" Dario's voice was dangerously calm. "He is safe, for now." Gallo leaned back, trying to project power. "He is a nice kid, scared but safe." Lena's stomach clenched. She dug her fingers deeper into Dario's arm. "Here is what happens," Gallo continued, lighting a thin cigar. "You're getting soft, Dario. This girl, she is a distraction. Your father would have never let it get this far. You have territory we want. The docks in the south, you give them to us, and you get the boy back. Simple." Dario stood perfectly still. "You do not get to say my father's name, and you do not get to make demands." "I think I do." Gallo smirked. "I have the kid. You have the girl. Looks like I have all the leverage." "You made a mistake, Riccardo," Dario said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You thought you were taking a piece from a king, but all you did was touch something that belongs to me. You did not just kidnap a boy, you signed your own death warrant." Gallo's smirk wavered. He licked his lips. "Are you threatening me? In my own place?" "I am stating a fact," Dario said. Gallo's eyes darted to his men. "Maybe you are the one who is confused. You are outnumbered." "You think so?" Dario asked. Gallo's hands started to move under the table. Dario did not wait. In one explosive, fluid motion, he shoved Lena backward hard against the wall. "Down," he roared. The room erupted. Gallo's men flipped the table, drawing weapons. The sound of gunfire was deafening in the small, curtained space. It was not like the movies. It was chaotic, loud, and terrifying. Plaster exploded from the walls. Lena was on the floor, her hands over her head, screaming. Dario was in front of her, a shield. He had not ducked. He was standing, a gun in his hand, returning fire with methodical, precise shots. 2 booms. 2 men fell. He grabbed Lena by the arm, hauling her to her feet. "Move! Now!" He pushed her through the curtain, back into the main casino, which was now in total chaos. Men were shouting, running, diving for cover. A man burst out from a side door, blocking their path, raising a pistol. Dario pushed Lena behind him again, firing twice. The man crumpled. They were almost at the exit. Dario kicked the door open as they spilled out into the dark, wet alley. More shots rang out from the doorway behind them. Dario grunted, a sharp intake of breath, and shoved Lena forward. "Get in the car! Go!" His driver was already there, the black sedan roaring to life. Dario pushed her into the back seat and dove in after her, screaming at the driver, "Go! Go!" The tires screeched, the car fishtailing on the wet pavement before finding traction and launching into the night, leaving the shouts and gunfire behind. Lena was hyperventilating, her entire body shaking, her ears ringing. Dario was leaning back against the seat, his eyes closed, his gun still in his hand. "Are you okay?" she gasped, her voice hoarse. Did they hit you?" "I am fine," he said, his voice strained. "You are not fine," she said, her voice rising. "You are... Oh, God." In the dim light of the passing street lamps, she saw it. The sleeve of his dark suit jacket was soaked. His hand, resting on his knee, was slick with blood. "You are hit," she whispered. "It is nothing," he growled. "It is a graze. It is not nothing." They arrived back at the safe house. The guards, clearly alerted, swarmed the car, their guns drawn. Dario waved them off. Climbing out, he was steady on his feet, but his face was pale, drawn tight with pain. He strode into the house. Lena was right behind him. "Get the kit," he said to one of his men. "In my bathroom." "I will do it," Lena said, pushing past the guard. She ran up the stairs to Dario's room, a room she had never seen. It was vast and empty, dominated by a large bed. She found the bathroom. It was all black marble and steel. She found the first aid kit under the sink and ran back out. He was in his bedroom, standing by the window, his back to her. He had taken off his suit jacket. His white shirt was ruined, one sleeve torn and saturated in crimson. "Sit down," she ordered. He turned, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he obeyed, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "Let me see," she said. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely unbutton his cuff. He watched her, his expression unreadable. "Just rip it," he said. She grabbed the blood-soaked fabric and tore it open, exposing his upper arm. The bullet had torn a nasty, open furrow along the muscle, high on his bicep. It was bleeding freely. "God," she whispered, her stomach turning. "It is fine. Lena, just clean it." She opened the kit, antiseptic, gauze, tape. Her hands were shaking. I cannot do this," she said, her eyes filling with tears again. "I am not a nurse." "Yes, you can," he said, his voice quiet, firm. He reached out his good hand and cupped her jaw. His thumb stroked her cheek, right below her eye. It was not a sexual touch, it was grounding, just as his embrace had been in the dark. "Breathe," he commanded softly. "You are fine. I am fine. Just clean the wound." She stared into his eyes. They were so dark, so deep. She could see the pain he was trying to hide, but she also saw an unshakable confidence in her. He believed she could do this. She took a shaky breath. She nodded. She poured the antiseptic onto a cotton pad. "This is going to hurt." "I know." She pressed the pad to the raw wound. He hissed, a sharp, violent intake of breath, his entire body tensing, but he did not pull away. She cleaned the graze, her hands trembling, but her movements becoming more steady. She was focusing on the task, on the mechanics of it, the blood, the antiseptic, the white gauze. He did not speak. He just watched her face. He watched her brows furrow in concentration. He watched her bite her lip. When she finished cleaning it, she looked up. He was closer than she realized. His face was just inches from hers. The silence in the room was deafening. All she could hear was her own heart, his steady, pained breathing. "You are very brave," he whispered. "I am not," she whispered back. "I am terrified. You came with me. You are tending to this. You did not run. You were protecting me, she said, her eyes tracing the line of his jaw, the mark of her handprint still faintly visible. I will always protect you, he said. The charge between them was back, 1,000 times stronger than it had been in the dark hallway. It was no longer confusion. It was something else. A desperate, terrifying, undeniable connection. She was still holding the bloody gauze in one hand, her other hand the clean one. Rose. She did not know she was doing it until her fingers touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his cheekbone. His eyes closed at her touch. She leaned in. She kissed him. It was slow, hesitant, a press of her lips against his. It was a question. His response was immediate. His good hand, the one that had been on his knee, flew to her waist, pulling her closer, off her feet, settling her on the bed next to him. His other hand, the injured one, came up to tangle in her hair, ignoring the pain. His mouth opened against hers, and the kiss went from hesitant to desperate in a single heartbeat. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a raw, deep, passionate claiming. It was all the terror of the night, all the fear, all the anger, melted into a desperate, fiery need. He tasted of coffee and control, of iron and something uniquely him. His lips were firm, demanding. He angled his head, deepening the kiss, his tongue tracing hers. Lena gasped, her hands flying up to grip his shoulders. She felt his groan more than she heard it, a vibration in his chest that shot through her. This was not the cold, stone-faced boss. This was a man, bleeding in pain, and holding on to her as if she were the only solid thing in the world. He pulled her tighter, his grip on her hair possessive, his mouth bruising hers. Her fingers uncurled from his shoulders and moved up, tangling in the thick, dark hair at the nape of his neck. She kissed him back with all the fear and confusion and white-hot adrenaline she had. It was too much. It was not enough. He finally broke the kiss, pulling back, his forehead resting against hers. They were both breathing hard, their chests rising and falling in sync. His eyes were closed. "Lena," he breathed, his voice rough. She was trembling, her lips tingling. "Dario." They stayed like that for a long time. When he finally opened his eyes, the cold mask was gone. In its place was a raw, tormented vulnerability. "You should not have done that," he whispered. "You kissed me back," she said, in her voice shaking. He looked away, his jaw clenching. He looked at his arm, at the blood. "Why are you like this?" she asked. The question pulled from the deepest part of her. "Why is this your life? You are not like them, not like Gallo." Dario was silent for a long time. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "My mother died when I was young. Cancer, my father, and he was the monster everyone thinks I am." Lena waited, not moving. "He was abusive," Dario said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He loved power, he loved the violence. He hurt people because he enjoyed it. He built this organization on fear and cruelty. When he died, I took over. I was 22. He looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. "I did not want it, but I knew what would happen if I did not. Men like Gallo, men like my father, they would tear the city apart. I took control to stop them. I thought I could, I do not know, clean it up, impose order, protect the people he hurt." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "It was a fool's errand. You do not clean up a sewer, Lena. You just become a different kind of filth, and everything went sideways. I am no better than him." "That is not true," she said, her voice fierce. "You protected me. You shielded me with your own body. A man like your father would not have done that." He looked at her, searching her face, as if he wanted to believe her. "You are not him," she whispered, her hand rising to touch his cheek again. "You are not." He did not answer. The exhaustion of the night, of the confession, settled over him. He was injured, he was bleeding, and he had just shown her the one part of himself he kept hidden from the world. She stood up. "You need to sleep." "I cannot, not until—" "Leo," she finished. "I know, but you are bleeding, and you are exhausted. You are no good to him if you collapse." She went into his bathroom, found a clean shirt for him, and helped him get his bloody one off. She taped the bandage in place. He submitted. His movements slow, his energy gone. He lay back on the bed, on top of the covers, still in his pants, and closed his eyes. Lena looked at him, at this powerful, dangerous, tormented man. Her heart ached with a feeling she was too terrified to name. She did not leave. She could not. She pulled a large leather armchair from the corner of the room. Positioning it next to his bed, she sat down, watching him. "Lena," he murmured, his eyes still closed. "I am here," she said. He did not speak, but his uninjured hand moved, searching across the bed. She understood. She reached out and took it, his fingers, strong and warm, closed around hers instantly, his grip tight, possessive, as if he were afraid she would dissolve. He slept. She did not. She sat in the chair all night, holding his hand, and for the first time since he had burst into her life, she was not afraid of him. She was afraid for him. The first gray light of dawn was filtering into the room when his phone, resting on the nightstand, buzzed. Dario was awake instantly. The cold, controlled boss was back. He released her hand, grabbing the phone. He sat up, his movements stiff. He listened. A warehouse? On the river? Lena's heart stopped. He listened again, his face darkening. Gallo is not that smart. It is a trap. He hung up the phone and looked at her. "They found him," she said, already standing. "They found a location," he corrected, his voice hard. "It is where Gallo is moving his product. He's daring me to come. It is an ambush. Lena, 100%. "So what do? We call the police?" He gave her a look that made her feel foolish. "The police cannot help us." He stood up, grabbing his gun from the nightstand and checking the clip. He winced as he moved his injured arm. "Dario, no," she said, her blood running cold. "You cannot. You said it yourself. It is a trap. You are injured." "He is there," Dario said, his voice flat. "Gallo is stupid. He thinks I will not go because it is a trap. But he does not know me. He has my property. He has your brother." "You will be killed," she cried, grabbing his good arm. He stopped and looked down at her, his hand on hers. He was no longer the vulnerable man who had confessed his past. He was the king, the predator, the man who had walked into her room and taken her life. "I made you a promise," he said, his voice low and final. "I am going to get him back." He pulled his arm from her grasp and walked out of the room, not looking back. Dario was in the foyer, his men moving around him with the silent, lethal efficiency of a wolf pack. They were dressed in dark, practical gear, sliding magazines into weapons and checking earpieces. The tension in the air was so thick, Lena could taste it, metallic and cold. "You are not coming, Lena," Dario said, not even looking at her. He was checking a pistol, his movements sharp, economical, despite the bandages on his arm. "This is not a discussion. He's my brother." Lena ran down the stairs, planting herself directly in his path. "You are injured. You said it yourself. It is a trap. You cannot go in there alone." "I am not alone." He gestured to the 6 men with him. "And I am not asking. I am ordering you to stay here. Franco, you are with her. Lock her in the room if you must." "No." Lena's voice was shaking, but it was pure iron. She looked past Dario, at the hard-faced men. "If you leave me here, I will find a way out. I will break a window. I will scream until my lungs burst. And if you go, and you die, I will never forgive you. He's my family. I am going." Dario's head snapped up, his eyes, cold and dark, bored into hers. He saw no tears, no hysterics. He saw the same raw, unbreakable will he had seen in the casino, the same fire that had slapped him and then kissed him, and he was wasting time. "Fine," he snarled. The word a curse. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "You will wear this." He ripped a tactical vest from a nearby bag and shoved it at her. "You will not speak. You will not move. You will do exactly what I say. When I say it, if you hesitate, you will get us both killed. If I tell you to run, you will run and you will not look back. Am I clear?" "Crystal," she said, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the heavy buckles. He did not help her. He shoved her toward the garage. "You ride with me. Stay on the floor." The convoy, 2 black SUVs and Dario's armored sedan, moved through the pre-dawn city with terrifying speed. Lena was huddled on the floorboards, her heart hammering against the hard vest. Dario sat in the passenger seat, silent, staring out at the gray, empty streets, his profile carved from stone. The warehouse loomed out of the river fog, a massive, decaying brick monolith. It smelled of rust and damp earth. Dario's men fanned out, disappearing into the shadows. "Stay," Dario commanded, his hand on the door. "No," Lena said, scrambling up. "He's in there. I'm not waiting." Before he could argue, she was out of the car, running behind him, her sneakers silent on the wet pavement. Dario cursed, low and vicious. "Behind me. Do not touch anything." He did not knock. One of his men used a silence tool on a side door lock, and it clicked open. Dario pushed the door open, leading the way into a cavernous darkness. The sound was immediate. The crack of a gunshot, not from a pistol, but a high-powered rifle, echoed from a catwalk above. The bullets sparked off the concrete floor, inches from Dario's foot. "Trap!" one of his men yelled. The warehouse exploded in light. Floodlights snapped on, illuminating the entire space, revealing at least a dozen men, armed, waiting on the ground floor and on the metal walkways above. "Get down!" Dario roared. He grabbed Lena, throwing her behind a massive, rusted piece of machinery. Gunfire erupted from all sides. It was a deafening, chaotic war. Muzzle flashes lit the dark, strobing faces of rage and fear. Dario was not hiding. He was using the machinery as a shield, leaning out, firing. His shots were not random. They were measured. 1, 2. A man on the catwalk clutched his chest and fell. "Stay here," Dario yelled at her, his voice barely audible over the din. He moved, signaling to his men, advancing into the firefight. Lena pressed herself against the cold steel, her heart trying to escape her chest. She could not just sit here. Leo. Where was Leo? She scanned the chaos. Dario and his men were pushing the gunmen back, a brutal, calculated assault. She saw a set of metal stairs in the far corner, leading up to a small, windowed office. The only part of the upper level that was dark. He would be there. She did not think. She just ran. She sprinted from cover, her feet pounding the concrete. "Lena!" Dario's scream was pure fury. "Get back here," she ignored him, reaching the stairs, scrambling up them, her lungs burning. The sound of the battle was slightly muffled here. She reached the landing and kicked the office door open. It was dark, and for a second, she thought it was empty. "Leo?" she whispered, her voice choked. "Lena?" He was in the corner. He was in his wheelchair, his hands tied to the armrests, his face pale and streaked with tears. He was terrified, but he was alive. "Oh God, Leo!" she sobbed. Rushing to him, she fell to her knees, fumbling with the thick, cruel ropes. "I am here. I am here. It is okay." "Lena, who are those men?" he cried. "There was shooting." "It is okay. They are with me. We are getting you out." "I would not be so sure about that." Lena froze. A man stepped out from the shadows behind the door. He was not one of Gallo's flashy thugs. He was older, his face scarred, his eyes empty. He held a pistol, and it was aimed directly at her. "Let the boy go," the man said, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Please," Lena begged, her hands still on the ropes. "He is just a child. He has nothing to do with this. He is leverage, and now, so are you." He moved fast, grabbing Lena by the hair and yanking her to her feet. He pressed the cold muzzle of the gun to her temple. The office door crashed open. Dario stood there, his face a mask of hellish fury. His gun was raised. Behind him, the warehouse was quiet. The fight was over. Dario's eyes went from the man, to the gun at Lena's head, to Leo. His gaze softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened into black ice. "Let her go," Dario said, his voice lethally quiet. "Drop the gun, Ventresi," the man sneered, "or I will splatter her brains all over her brother. I do not care. I get paid either way." "Do not," Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Dario, do not." "Shut up," the man screamed, pressing the gun so hard into her skin. It hurt. "Drop it, now." Dario looked at Lena. He saw her terror, her shaking, her plea, and he saw her resignation. She was willing to die. slowly. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle pulsed. Dario Ventresi lowered his weapon. He opened his hand. The heavy black pistol clattered to the floor. "Kick it," the man ordered. Dario kicked it. It slid across the dusty floor, stopping at the man's feet. "See?" the man said, a shaky, triumphant smile on his face. He started to drag Lena back, keeping the gun on her. "Gallo was right. You are soft. This is—" Clang! It was not a gunshot. It was the sound of metal on metal. Leo, his face a mask of tears and rage, had used all his strength to slam his wheelchair sideways, crashing it into a tall metal filing cabinet. The sudden, violent noise was all it took. The gunman flinched, his head turning for a split second, his grip on Lena loosening. Dario moved. He did not go for the gun on the floor. He dropped, his uninjured hand diving for his ankle. In one seamless, terrifying blur, he pulled a smaller pistol from a holster, rose to a low crouch, and fired. The single crack was deafening. The man's eyes went wide with shock. He did not make a sound. He just collapsed, his grip on Lena releasing, and fell to the floor. Silence. Heavy, ringing silence. Dario was breathing hard, his gun still raised, aimed at the fallen man. Lena was frozen, staring at the body. "Lena!" Leo's voice broke the spell. She rushed to him, her hands, now free, tearing at the knots. They finally came loose. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder, sobbing his name over and in. "Leo! Leo! Leo!" Dario stood in the doorway, his gun slowly lowering. He looked at Lena, holding her brother. He looked at the boy, who was staring at him, his eyes wide with terror and awe. "It is over," Dario said, his voice rough. He walked over and kicked the man's gun away, then retrieved his own. "We are leaving." They did not go to a hospital. Dario's men carried Leo, still in his chair, down to the sedan. They drove, not to the safe house, but to a nondescript brownstone in a quiet, wealthy neighborhood. "Where are we?" Lena asked, as they took Leo inside, down a set of stairs to a brightly lit, sterile room. "It is a clinic," Dario said. "My clinic, my doctor." A kind, older man in scrubs was waiting. "Mr. Ventresi, this is the boy?" "This is Leo," Lena said. He was in an accident. I know all about him, Miss Marquez." The doctor said gently. "Mr. Ventresi provided me with his complete file 2 days ago." Lena turned to look at Dario. He was standing by the door, watching, his face unreadable. He had been preparing for this. For an hour. The doctor examined Leo. He checked for dehydration, for injuries, his voice calm and reassuring. Lena stood by, holding Leo's hand, never letting go. Dario did not leave. He stood by the wall, silent, watching. "He's fine," the doctor finally announced. "Shaken, terrified, and dehydrated, but unharmed. I will give him a mild sedative to help him rest." Lena sagged, the relief so profound it almost made her sick. "Thank you. Thank you." While the doctor was administering the sedative, Lena stepped away to sign a form. Leo, his eyes already heavy, looked over at the man by the wall. You shot him," Leo whispered. Dario moved, coming to the side of the examination table. His face was not cold or hard. It was softened by an emotion Lena could not name. "I did," Dario said. "You saved her," Leo murmured, his eyelids fluttering. Dario looked at the boy, at his frail body and the spirit that had kicked that cabinet. He reached out, his large hand gently clasping Leo's. "You saved her, too," Dario said, his voice low and soft, meant only for the boy. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen." Leo, kicking that chair. "That was smart. You saved your sister." Leo gave a small, sleepy smile and his eyes closed. Lena stood by the door, watching. She saw her captor, the mafia boss, the killer, holding her brother's hand. She saw the genuine, unforced tenderness in his touch, and her heart, which she thought was shattered by fear, broke all over again, but for a different reason. They returned to the safe house as the sun was rising. Leo was carried to a guest room, identical to Lena's, and she sat with him until his breathing was deep and even. A guard was posted outside his door. Lena finally left, her bones aching with a weariness that went beyond muscle. She found Dario in his bedroom. He was standing by the window, his back to her, the first aid kit open on his bed. He had taken off his shirt and the tactical vest, the bandage on his arm, the one from the casino, was soaked through with fresh blood. He had clearly ripped the wound open during the fight. "He is asleep," she said quietly. Dario nodded, not turning. "Good. Thank you." The words were completely inadequate. How do you thank a man for murdering for you? How do you thank him for returning your world? He turned. His face was a map of pure exhaustion. The lines around his eyes were deep, his skin pale. "I told you I would." She walked to him, her feet moving on their own. She stopped just in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. "You are bleeding. Again." "It is fine." "No, it is not." She took the roll of gauze from his hand. "Sit." He obeyed, sinking onto the edge of the bed. She did not clean the wound this time. She just wrapped it, her hands no longer shaking. Her fingers were steady as they moved over his skin, securing the bandage, her touch lingering on his feep. He was watching her, his gaze intense. When she finished, her hands did not move away. They stayed on his arm, then moved up, slowly, to his shoulders. She rested them there, feeling the solid, warm muscle beneath her palms. She looked up, meeting his dark eyes. They were not the eyes of the boss or the killer. They were the eyes of the man who had confessed his past, the man who had held her brother's hand. She rose on her toes, her hands sliding from his shoulders to cup his jaw. She kissed him. It was a slow, vulnerable press of her lips to his. It was a kiss of gratitude, of terror, of a deep, aching relief. It was a kiss that said, "You are alive. I am alive. We are alive." For a second, he was perfectly still, as if he could not believe it. Then his uninjured arm snaked around her waist, pulling her flush against his bare chest. His other hand came up, tangling in her hair, pulling her head back. He kissed her. It was not the bruising, desperate kiss of the night before. This was tender. This was emotional. This was a deep, searching, mutual surrender. His mouth was warm, insistent, tasting her, learning her. She opened for him, her hands gripping his face, her fingers digging into the hair at his temples. A low groan rumbled in his chest. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms locking around his neck. He stood, carrying her, and sat them both on the edge of the bed, never breaking the kiss. She was still fully clothed. He was in his pants. It did not matter. His lips left hers, trailing fire down her jaw to the sensitive pulse point on her neck. She arched back, her head falling, giving him access. A small, broken sound escaped her. His lips were soft, hot, a stark contrast to the violent world he inhabited. He held her hips, his hands gripping her jeans, pressing her against him, a silent, desperate affirmation. It was not sex, it was proximity. It was a collision of two souls who had seen death and chosen each other. She held his head, her fingers tangled in his hair, her body trembling. He breathed her in, his face buried in the curve of her neck, as if she were air. Finally, he rested his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. She was shaking. They stayed like that for a long time, just breathing each other in. She slid from his lap, and they lay down on the bed, on top of the covers, side by side. She was still in her jeans and shirt. He was still in his pants. She rested her head on his good shoulder, her arm draped across his chest. His arm came around her, holding her close. "Dario?" she whispered into the quiet room. What happens now? Gallo is... He is gone. It is over, right? What happens to us? He was silent for so long. She thought he had fallen asleep, but she felt the tension return to his body. "I do not know, Lena," he said, his voice heavy. "We are safe, though, right? Leo is safe." He turned his head, his cheek brushing her hair. "Gallo was a symptom, he was not the disease. My world. It does not just end. Men like him are replaced in a day. The Falcones are still out there." He sighed, a sound of deep, profound weariness. "I cannot promise you safety. Lena, not forever. I cannot promise you a normal life." Lena's heart, which had been so full, now ached with a cold dose of reality. He was not offering her a fairy tale. He was offering her the only thing he had left, the truth. Before she could answer, his phone, resting on the nightstand, buzzed. He tensed, grabbing it. What? He sat up, swinging his legs off the bed, his back to her. He listened, his entire body going rigid. Who? He asked, his voice a low growl. There was a long pause. Marco, he said. The name was flat, dead. Are you certain? He stood up, pacing, a coiled, violent energy suddenly radiating from him. He leaked her location? The first time? The safe house? Lena sat up, her blood running cold. Marco, she knew that name. His consigliere, his most trusted advisor. Find him, Dario snarled into the phone, his voice a lethal weapon. Bring him to me, alive. He hung up, his back still to her. He was shaking, but it was not from weariness. It was from a rage so profound it terrified her. Dario, what is it? What happened? The man at the window, he said, his voice tight. The night I brought you here, the Falcones knew where to find you. That was not a coincidence. How? She whispered. He turned, and his eyes were black with a pain that was worse than any bullet wound. My consigliere, my top man, the man who was like a brother to me, Marco. He has been feeding information to the Falcones for months. He sold you out. He is the reason Gallo knew about Leo. But why? Because he, too, thinks I am soft. Dario spat. Because of you. He was pulling on a clean shirt, a jacket. His movements were jerky, violent. This was not a war party. This was an execution. Where are you going? She asked, scrambling off the bed. To clean my house. He growled. He stormed to the door, yanking it open. Franco! Vinny! 2 guards ran up. You will not leave this hallway, Dario commanded, his voice raw with fury. She does not leave her room. Her brother does not leave his... Put 4 men on this floor. No one gets in. No one, at all costs. Do you understand me? Yes, boss. He looked back at Lena one last time, his eyes a storm of betrayal, rage, and a deep, agonizing conflict. Then he was gone. The door slammed shut, and she heard the heavy, final click of the lock. Lena woke up to silence. A thick, heavy, terrifying silence that felt louder than the gunfire in the warehouse. The space beside her in the massive bed was empty, the sheets cold. He was gone. She sat up, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, the rage he had left in, the black, consuming fury of betrayal, had been terrifying. But this silence, the not knowing, was worse. Was he alive? Was he lying in an alley somewhere, bleeding out? Or was he coming back? She stumbled out of the bedroom. The 2 guards in the hallway, Franco and Vinny, stood impassive. They were statues of muscle and dark suits. Where is he? She demanded. Mr. Ventresi is handling business, Franco said, his voice flat, his eyes looking through her. He is injured. He was furious. He should not be alone. He's not alone, Vinny said, and the finality in his tone made her stomach clench. You are prisoners, just like me. Are not you? She whispered. Franco's gaze met hers, and for a second, she saw a flicker of something. Pity, maybe. We protect the family, ma'am. He is the family. Now please, go back in your room. My brother, she said, pushing past them. I am seeing my brother? They did not stop her. They flanked her as she walked the 20 feet to Leo's room. She opened the door. He was awake, sitting up in his bed, his wheelchair beside it. He was sketching in a notebook Dario must have provided. Another guard was in the corner of his room, silent. Hey, Leo said, his voice small. Those men. They are still here. I know, Lena said, forcing a smile. She sat on the edge of his bed. Are you okay? I am fine. Just scared. He looked up from his pad. That man, Dario, he's not a good person. Is he? Lena's throat tightened. He's complicated. Leo, he saved us. He's the reason we needed saving, Leo replied, his young voice sharp with an insight that cut her. She had no answer for that. The day dragged. Every sound in the house made her jump. Every car on the distant road, every footstep in the hall. She and Leo ate lunch in his room, the guard watching them. Night fell again. Lena sat in the chair in her room, watching the door, her heart aching with a physical, painful intensity. He was not coming back. He had gone to face his betrayer, and he had died. He had been right. He could not promise her safety. He could not even promise her himself. The kiss they shared, the confession of his past, it was all just a prelude to a death she was not allowed to witness. She must have fallen asleep in the chair because the sound of the bedroom door opening startled her awake. It was almost dawn. The gray light was filtering in. Dario stood in the doorway. He was not the man who had left. He was a ruin. His suit was gone, replaced by a black t-shirt that was ripped and dark with stains. His face was a swollen, grotesque mask of bruises. One eye was nearly swelled shut. His knuckles were raw, split open. A fresh line of crude, black stitches ran along his jaw, bleeding sluggishly. He was not walking. He was leaning against the door frame, his entire body trembling. His breathing a low, pained rasp. He was holding his injured arm, which looked even worse. He was caked in mud and blood. He had won, but just barely. "Dario," she breathed. It was not a word. It was a prayer. She flew across the room, her hands hovering, afraid to touch him, afraid he would shatter. "Oh my God, what happened?" He looked at her, his one good eye tracking her face, and a look of profound, agonizing relief passed over him. "Marco," he rasped, his voice shredded. "It is done. You are bleeding everywhere. You need a doctor. The clinic—" "No," he said, his voice firm, even in its broken state. "No more doctors. No more of my men. Just help me." He pushed off the door frame. Stumbling, Lena caught him, her small frame straining under his weight. He was heavy, his body a dead weight, his strength completely spent. She half dragged, half carried him to the bed. He collapsed onto the mattress, groaning. His eyes squeezed shut against the pain. "I thought you were dead," Lena whispered, her hands shaking as she went to the bathroom, grabbing the first aid kit. Her heart was hammering, a wild, frantic drum of relief and terror. I sat here all night. I thought he had killed you. He tried." Dario breathed. As she returned, she began to clean his face, her touch infinitely gentle, wiping away the blood and grime from his swollen skin. He hissed as the antiseptic touched the open cuts, but he did not pull away. He said, Dario's voice was low, his eyes still closed. He said, "You made me soft." Lena's hand paused. "What did you do?" "I showed him how soft I was," Dario said. The image of it, the raw, personal violence, made her shiver. This was the man she had kissed. This was the man who had held her brother's hand. She cleaned his split knuckles. She put butterfly closures on the worst of the cuts. The stitches on his jaw were brutal, but they were holding. He was a landscape of pain, and every bruise, every cut, felt like it was on her own skin. She was crying. She'd not even realized it. Tears streamed down her face, dripping onto his bruised chest. "Lena," he murmured, his good hand coming up, his scraped fingers trying to find her face. "I was so scared," she sobbed, her control finally breaking. "I was so terrified you were not coming back. I sat here, and I imagined you dead in some alley, and I could not breathe." She looked down at him, at his broken, ruined face, and the truth, the one she had been fighting since the power outage, the one that had solidified when he shielded her from bullets, came pouring out. "I love you," she whispered, the words tasting strange and foreign and absolutely true. "Do you hear me? I love you, Dario Ventresi, and I am so terrified you are going to die. I am so terrified of this life." His eye opened, the one that was not swollen shut. It was clear, intense, and focused entirely on her. The pain was gone, replaced by a sudden, fierce clarity. He lifted his hand, the one that was not raw, and cupped her face. His thumb, rough and calloused, wiped away her tears. "Dario," she wept, leaning into his touch. "I do not care about the suits or the house or the money. I do not want you to die." "Hey," he rasped, his thumb stroking her cheek. "Look at me." She met his gaze. "I do not care about the war," he said, his voice raw, but with a new, unshakable conviction. "I do not care about the territory, or the shipments, or the Falcones, or my father's legacy. I do not care." He pulled her face closer to his eyes holding hers captive. "I only care about you." He meant it. In the wreckage of his face, in the absolute ruin of his body, she saw the truth. The fight with Marco had not just been an execution, it had been an exorcism. He had killed the part of himself that was tied to that old world. "We are leaving," he said. "Leaving? What about your men? What about this house?" "It is a cage," he said. "They can have it. Franco will get us a car, a clean one. We're going to get your brother, and we are going to disappear." It was insane. It was impossible. But he had said it. 2 hours later, they were gone. They went out the back, while the main contingent of guards still watched the front. Franco, his face grim but loyal, had an SUV waiting. He handed Dario a duffel bag filled with cash and 2 clean guns. "Good luck, boss," was all he said. They drove for hours, leaving the city, the state. Behind, Lena drove, Dario beside her, drifting in and out of a pained sleep, a gun in his lap. In the back, Leo was asleep, the sedative from the clinic still working. They drove until the landscape changed from concrete and steel to green hills and vast, open skies. Dario directed her to a small, isolated house set deep in the mountains, hundreds of miles from anyone. It was not a safe house. It was a home. It was made of wood and stone, with a large porch and windows that were not tinted black. It smelled of pine and dust. For 3 weeks, the world stopped. There were no guards, no gunfire, no calls. There was only healing. Lena took care of the 2 men in her life. She cooked, simple food, bought from a grocery store in a small town 20 miles away. She made soup. She made sandwiches. She tended to Dario's wounds. The stitches on his jaw healed, leaving a thin, white scar. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to gone. His arm, finally given time to rest, began to mend. He was a different person here. The cold, controlled boss was gone, replaced by a man who was quiet, watchful, and tentative. He would sit on the porch for hours, just watching the trees. Leo, away from the city and the guards, began to relax. He spent his days on the porch, sketching the mountains, the trees, the birds. One afternoon, Lena found Dario standing in the kitchen, awkwardly trying to make coffee, his arm still stiff. She smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Here," she said, gently pushing him aside. "Let me—" He leaned against the counter, watching her. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt. He looked younger. He looked, for the first time, almost peaceful. "You are good at this," he said quietly. "At what? Making coffee?" "This." He gestured around the small, warm kitchen. "The quiet, the home. I have been dreaming of it my whole life," she said, handing him a mug. He took it, his fingers brushing hers. The simple touch sent a jolt through her. They fell into a new routine. They ate dinner together on the porch, watching the sunset. They talked, not about the past, not about the mafia. They talked about Leo's drawings. They talked about the book Lena was reading. They laughed. It was a strange rusty sound from Dario, but it was real. One afternoon, the sun was streaming into the living room, lighting up the dust motes dancing in the air. It was warm, quiet. Leo was napping in his room. Dario was reading on the sofa, his injuries almost completely healed. Lena sat down beside him. He looked up. His eyes, once so cold, were now warm and clear. "You are healing," she said, her voice soft. "We are," he replied. She reached out, her hand tracing the new, pale scar on his jaw. It is a part of you now." He caught her hand, turning his head to press a kiss into her palm. "You are a part of me now." He leaned in, and she met him halfway. The kiss was nothing like the ones before. It was not the desperate, adrenaline-fueled collision at the safe house. It was not the tender, emotional kiss after the warehouse. This was slow. This was deep. This was a kiss of absolute, quiet certainty. It was a promise. His lips were soft, moving over hers with a patience she never knew he possessed. Her hands came up to frame his face, her thumbs stroking his temples. His hands settled on her waist, pulling her gently closer. There was no desperation, no fear. There was just the warm sun, the silent house, and the steady beat of their hearts. He pulled back, just enough to rest his forehead against hers. They stayed like that, their eyes closed, their breathing sinking, sharing the same air. It was the most intimate they had ever been. It was perfect, and it was shattered by the shrill, violent ringing of a cell phone. They both froze. It was not her phone. It was a burner phone Dario had kept in the duffel bag, one he had not touched in 3 weeks. The spell was broken. Dario's body went rigid. The peace evaporated. He pulled away from her, his face already transforming. The cold mask was back. He walked across the room, picked up the bag, and pulled out the ringing phone. He looked at the number, his jaw clenched. He answered it. Franco. Lena stood, her heart frozen, watching him. What? Dario's voice was low. He listened, his back to her. She saw his shoulders tense, his hand clench into a fist at his side. Who? He snarled. He was silent for a long, terrible minute. Where? He hung up the phone. He did not turn around. He just stood, staring at the wall. Dario? Lena whispered, her voice trembling. What is it? The Falcones, he said, his voice a dead, flat monotone. Gallo and his crew. They were just an appetizer. The real head of the family, the one who was working with Marco. He is cleaning house. He took out Gallo's remnants. He took over my territory. But he does not know where we are. Franco would not... Franco did not, Dario said. He finally turned. His face was pale, his eyes black with a cold, familiar dread. He did not have to... They are not looking for me. They are hunting you. They have a new prize. The woman who made Dario Ventresi soft. The woman who made him walk away. They know we are here, she whispered. He nodded. They are on their way. We have to run, she said, her mind already racing. We can get Leo. We can take the car. We can... Run where? Lena? He asked, his voice heavy with the weight of his old life. We can run forever. They will never stop. Not now. They have to prove I am nothing. He looked at her, his eyes filled with the agony of the choice. We either run forever, or we fight. Right here, once and for all. Dario stood, the phone in his hand, a conduit to a life he thought he had escaped. The cold, hard mask of the boss was back, but his eyes were not dead, as they had been. They were filled with a cold, burning fury. A fury for what was being threatened. Run, Lena said, her voice a desperate whisper. Dario, please, we can take the car. We can be gone in 5 minutes. We can go to Canada, Mexico, anywhere. Please, choose us. I am choosing you, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. He turned to face her. Do you think this is a life, Lena? Looking over our shoulder every second? Wondering if the man at the next table is there to kill us? Wondering if Leo is safe at school? That is not life. It is a cage. It is better than you being dead, she cried, her hands fisting at her sides. That is the alternative. You go to them, you fight them, and you die. No, he said. He walked to her, his movements stiff, the old wounds aching with new tension. He took her by the shoulders. I am ending it. Not as a boss, not for territory, as a man, protecting his family. He picked up the burner phone again. He dialed the number Franco had given him. This is Ventresi, he said, his voice echoing with an authority she had not heard since the warehouse. I am done running. You want what is mine? You want to make a point? You meet me tonight. Midnight. The old Red Hook Pier. You and me, Falcone, we finish this. He listened. Just you and me. No armies. You come with more than 2 men. The deal is off, and I will burn your entire organization to the ground, starting with your son in college. He hung up. Dario, no, Lena begged, grabbing the front of his shirt. You cannot. You are one man. You just healed. He will bring an army. He will kill you. He will come, and he will try, Dario said. He looked down at her, his eyes softening, the cold fury replaced by a deep, aching tenderness. This is the only way. Lena, the only way we are ever free. He pulled her to him, His uninjured arm wrapping around her like a steel band, he kissed her. It was not gentle. It was hard, desperate, a kiss that tasted of fear and finality. It was a bruising, possessive claim, a brand. He poured all his fear, all his love, all his determination into it. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his back, kissing him with the same desperation, as if she could physically hold him to life. Then, just as abruptly, he gentled. His mouth softened. His hand came up to cup her face, his touch reverent. He kissed her slowly, deeply. A vow without words. He pulled back, his forehead resting against hers. "I will come back," he whispered, his voice rough, "or I will die trying to protect what's mine." He left her at a small, clean motel 2 towns over. Leo was with her, confused and terrified. "Where's he going, Lena? Why are we here?" He is fixing a problem," she whispered, her hands shaking as she locked the door. "He will be back." Dario drove alone to the Red Hook Pier. The fog rolled in off the black water, thick and cold. The air smelled of salt, diesel, and decay. The pier was a skeleton of rotting wood, lit only by a single flickering lamp at the end. He got out of the car. He was armed. He had the duffel bag with him. 2 cars were already there. Lorenzo Falcone, a man in his 50s with cold, dead eyes and an expensive overcoat, stood by the lamp. He had 4 men with him, not 2. Dario had expected it. "Ventresi," Falcone called, his voice carrying in the damp air. "You came alone. A foolish, sentimental move. You are soft." "Falcone," Dario said, walking forward, his hands visible. He stopped 20 feet away. "You know what I want. You know what I am offering." "Ah, yes," Falcone sneered. "The deal. You give me everything, the territory, the name, the legacy. And I let you walk away with the girl and the cripple. A touching story." "I'm giving it to you anyway," Dario said, his voice flat. "I'm already gone. This is just a courtesy. Let them go. You win. The city is yours. You have my word." "Your word?" Falcone laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Your word is nothing. Your name is a joke. Thanks to her, she is a symbol. Dario. She's the woman who broke the Ventresi line. I cannot let that stand. I cannot let you live. It is bad for business." "So there is no deal," Dario said. It was not a question. "There is only this," Falcone said, and his hand went inside his coat. Dario was already moving. He had not been standing. He had been waiting. He dove behind a stack of rusted lobster pots as the night exploded. Gunfire ripped through the air, the sound deafening. Splinters flying from the wooden pier. Ario was not the man he had been. He was not a boss defending territory. He was a predator protecting his mate. He was fighting for Lena, for Leo, for the quiet house in the mountains. He moved with a speed and fury that stunned them. He fired from cover, his shots precise, controlled. One man fell, then another. Falcone was screaming, firing blindly into the fog. "Kill him! Kill him!" Dario rolled, came up on one knee, his injured arm seared with pain, but he ignored it. He saw a muzzle flash. He fired twice. A third man grunted, collapsing. A bullet tore through the air, catching Dario high in the chest. The impact was a sledgehammer, knocking him back. He gasped, the wind driven from him, a white-hot agony blossoming under his ribs. He was hit. He was hit bad. "He is down!" Falcone yelled, stepping out from behind his car. "Finish him!" Dario lay on the damp wood, the fog swirling around him. He could feel the hot, wet spread of blood. He thought of Lena, waiting. He thought of her face when he kissed her. "I'll come back." The last man ran toward him, his gun raised. Dario's hand, still clutching his pistol, rose. He fired. Once, the man fell. It was silent, just the sound of the water lapping at the pier. Falcone was alone, his gun empty, his face a mask of disbelief. Dario pushed himself up, his body screaming. Blood poured from the wound in his chest. "It is over, Lorenzo!" he rasped, staggering to his feet. "You are dead!" Falcone whispered, fumbling for a new clip. "You first," Dario said, and fired his last bullet. He stood there for a long moment, the gun heavy in his hand, the pier littered with the cost of his freedom. Then, his strength gave out. He stumbled. catching himself, and began the long walk back to the car. Lena had not stayed at the motel. She had made Leo stay, had paid a stranger to watch him, and had followed Dario. She was parked a quarter mile down the road, hidden in an access lane, her body shaking so badly. She could barely breathe. She had heard the gunfire. 12 shots, 20, then silence. The silence was the worst. It stretched for 1 minute, 2, 5. She was about to get out, to run to him, when she saw a shape stumbling out of the fog. It was him. He was not walking. He was lurching, holding his chest, a dark stain spreading over his shirt. "Dario!" she screamed. The sound tore from her throat, a raw sound of animal grief. She launched herself from the car, running down the dark road. She met him as he nearly collapsed. "You are hit!" she cried, grabbing him. Her hands immediately wet with his blood. "Oh God, no, no, no. I am fine." He choked, leaning his full weight on her. "It is done. Lena, it is finished." "No," she sobbed. "Do not talk. Just lean on me. We're going home." She dragged him to the car, got him into the passenger seat. He was pale, his skin clammy, his breathing shallow. She pressed her hands to his wound, the blood hot and sticky, flowing between her fingers. "Hold this," she commanded, grabbing a towel from the back seat, shoving it against his chest. "Hold it. Hard. Do you hear me? You hold on." She drove. She drove like a maniac, her tears blinding her, her hands slipping on the wheel. She drove back to the country, back to the house, to the life they had just started. Weeks later, the late afternoon sun streamed into a bright, clean room. It was not the sterile clinic. It was not the mountain house. It was a new apartment, high above a new city. Dario was sitting in a chair by the window, a book in his lap. He was pale, thinner, but his eyes were clear. A jagged scar disappeared beneath his clean, white shirt. He had almost died. The doctor Franco had sent had performed surgery on the kitchen table, but he had survived. Lena was across the room, at a drafting table, sketching. Pencils were tucked behind her ear, and her face was smudged with charcoal. She was smiling. "You are staring," she said, not looking up. "I am admiring," he replied, his voice still a little rough, but steady. "How is the school search going?" "Leo is enrolled," Dario said. "The best design and architecture high school in the state. He starts Monday. He's already complaining that their drafting program is rudimentary." Lena laughed, a light, free sound that filled the room. "He's unbearable, and he loves it. Thank you." Dario closed his book. He was in slacks and a button-down shirt. No suit. He stood up, walking over to her. He looked at her designs. "They are good, Lena. They are more than good," she said, her voice proud. "I have a job, a real one. Junior designer at a firm downtown. Starting next week." "I know," he said, smiling. "I bought the building." "Dario," she gasped, horrified and delighted. "You did not?" "No," he laughed. "I did not. I just invested in the firm, a silent partner. They have no idea who I am." "You are impossible," she said, leaning back into his embrace. He was different. The violence was gone, the coldness. He had given up everything. Franco now ran what was left of the Ventresi territory, an arrangement made in the quiet of Dario's recovery. Dario had kept only the money, and his new security firm, a legitimate, high-end company, was already turning a profit. He was free. They were free. That evening, they walked along a beach. The sun was a fiery orange ball, sinking into the ocean, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air was warm, smelling of salt and clean, open water. Leo was back at the apartment, happily immersed in some complex architectural software. They walked hand in hand, their feet bare in the sand, the waves rushing up to kiss their ankles. Lena stopped, looking out at the vast, endless horizon. "I cannot believe it," she whispered. "All those nights at the diner. I was so tired. I thought I had lost everything. My life, my brother, any hope of a future." Dario turned to her. He took both her hands in his. The setting sun lit his face, catching the pale line of the scar on his jaw, the deeper one on his chest. "You saved me, Lena," he said, his voice quiet, sincere. "I was asleep." I was my father's son, walking in a nightmare, and I did not even know it. I thought control was power. I thought I was protecting people, but I was just trapped. He reached up, his hand stroking her cheek, his eyes holding hers. You woke me up. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of a release so profound. It shook her. She rose on her toes, and he leaned down, and they kissed. It was a kiss of homecoming. It was slow and deep and full of a quiet, unshakable joy. It was the kiss of two people who had walked through hell and found each other on the other side. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and she melted against him, her hands locking around his neck. They were wrapped in each other's arms, the setting sun painting them in gold. Free at last. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from. So please drop a comment and say hello. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for new chapters and tales. We cannot wait to read what you thought of Lena and Dario's journey. So please share your thoughts with us.